Yeah. Welcome everybody. I'm Sarah Bridge, the Director of the National Bighorn Sheep Center. Here our mission is to provide education and outreach for the national conservation of wild sheep, wildlife and wildlands. Through our museum each year we have about 4,000 to 5,000 visitors, and through our total program outreach it's close to 20,000. I'd like to introduce my colleague Michaela Kleeman here, who's helped to spearhead our membership program revamp. And this evening she is going to introduce our speaker and the first of some of our open houses through this program. So I'll have a seat and give it to Michaela.
Hi guys, thanks you all for coming out. I'm so excited that everyone is here and this is a great turnout. I'd like to turn it over to our local author, Tory Taylor.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks for coming out. For those of you that don't know me, I've prepared a couple of notes about autobiography a little bit, and I started out life at a very early age.
No, you're good. I'll just hold it.
But I really wanted to cover my first grade birthday party, but we'll save that. So we'll go ahead and start, and we can start there. Tonight we're here just for fun. I'm going to tell a story about a sheep hunt that I participated in back in 1979. My brother Bob was lucky enough to draw a sheep license, and his girlfriend and I decided to go on a bighorn sheep safari. So I'm just going to tell that story. For all of you that have hunted sheep, I hope this presentation might bring back some memories. For you all that have not hunted sheep, I hope that might give you a taste or a flavor of sheep hunting, and to see how one hunt went, how we did this during one time. I'll introduce our cast of characters as we go along. This is my brother Bob and Ichabod Crane. Brother Bob is on the left. And we're packing up down at Red Rocks area, and this is when we were young and didn't have very much horsepower. We weren't as prosperous as we are today. So we ended up taking 3 horses and hiking. We left Red Rocks and spent the day walking up over Arrow Mountain. So it was an altitude change of about, 6,500 feet up to over 11,000 feet. And I don't do that kind of stuff anymore. All righty, next slide.
So are you saying Red Rock's over near Grobon?
No, Red Rock's down the road right here. Yep. This is Smokey. He's the horse I rode up here in 1971 from Colorado, and my brother owned him at the time. Smokey was quite a horse and a hunter. There's a lot of horse stories about him. He did a lot of work. It was kind of a horse if you wanted to ride him or pack him or pull logs with it in harness or anything. It hurt horses, cattle, whatever. You grab a horse like this one. He spent his older years and later years babysitting for my nieces about this tall and all the neighborhood kids. So 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 would jump on him and Smokey would babysit them. Next. Oh, I'm going to move along pretty rapidly. Save any questions for later on and standing ovation for the end of the show. This is Frisky. This horse belongs to Frances. She'll show up here pretty soon. Carolyn, do you remember Frisky? He was quite a character and kind of unpredictable type horse, but he was our 3rd horse for this expedition. Next. Alrighty, we're packed up and taken off of the Red Rocks area down there. This is Frances, and she's on the right, and Frisky's on the left. We're packing a saddle, riding saddle on this trip, which is a little bit different, but we thought that maybe it'd be a good idea to have a riding saddle once we got back to base camp. So we packed a riding saddle. The other 2 horses have pack saddles on them. Next. Here's yours truly and younger Dad and Smokey. I'm the one on the left. Next. Alrighty, here we go. We're off and running. Black Mountain in the background. We're leaving Wind River down below there, you can see, and we're starting up for the high country. packing 2 horses or 3 horses all together, and away we go. Climbing up through the sagebrush country. Notice how the landscape changes throughout the day as we climb. Next. Here we are taking a water break, getting a little bit more altitude. Francis and I are rehydrating a little bit. Next. Up and away, you can see we're approaching timberline, closer up on Red Creek. We're going to be going over that pass on Arrow Mountain and then dropping down and picking up the glacier trail eventually. Next. Still climbing. Next. And still climbing. Almost there, finally. This is later on in the afternoon by the time we got this far. We kind of underestimated how long it was going to take us. But we kept moving. Next. Just looking back down, you can see the Wind River down below, Black Mountain in the distance, and you can see how far we've come. This is the country we're heading into. This is the Wind Rivers. And you can see the change in vegetation and the ecotones along this way. Next. Some more summer range of the bighorn sheep. This is where we're going. And one thing I want you all to take home out of this presentation is sheep live in a lot of different places. And the sheep, like out there, where a lot of you live in the red hill or painted hills out here, you know, the sheep are in your yard, and other places you drive right up to them, and they're up like Ring Lake, they're at the mineral lake there right beside the vehicles, and a lot of people think, well, what's the big deal about hunting sheep? Well, when you go in a country like this and start after them, it's a whole different ballgame. So, next. More sheep country. This is summer range, bighorn sheep. This is getting up towards the Continental Divide, up kind of close to Downs Mountain. I believe that's Downs Lake down below there. We finally picked up the glacier trail on the second day. We camped out one night going down into the area we're heading. There's a lot of water in this country. This is Star Lake along where the glacier trail is. Next. This is the infamous honeymoon switchbacks. Anybody that's ever walked or ridden this, especially ridden it in the dark, I've had to repack a horse on these, and it's quite thrilling. Next. We're finally in Downs Fork Meadows. This is where Dinwiddie and Downs Fork meet back in the Wind River. So we're almost to camp. We have to wait to Dinwiddie to get over to where we are planning on setting up our base camp. Next. Brother Bob's waiting the last little stretch. Mama Moose and he had a little conversation. She was protecting her calf over in the willows here. She kind of made him scamper out of the area. Next. So we set up a tent thinking that if the weather turns bad, we want some protection. As it turned out, the weather was absolutely beautiful on this whole trip. Back in this kind of country, if the weather goes bad, it's not that much fun. So we, just for insurance, we took a tent and set that up. Frances is sitting there. She is trying to read a recipe book. She is trying to study up on how to boil water. And she didn't claim to be a cook, but she told the great jokes, and she's always got a sense of humor, so that's why she was one of our main crew. Next. This is Frances setting up her kitchen, and our tent's back there, and one of her best tools for cooking she discovered was her fishing rod. It was right next to the Dinwiddie stream here. Next. This is quite a beautiful beach that we're on, kind of a Club Med in the Wind River Mountains. Next. Home sweet home. Thank goodness we didn't have to use it. And you see the tent back up in there. Next. Frances either doing a manicure. She was always wanting to up here just proper. recovering so she's fixing her nails for supper. And the moose out in the willows, those that have been in this country know how much willow and swamp there is. There's more now after the glacial blowouts up on Grasshopper Glacier flooded a lot of this area, and it's never recovered. It's more of a rice paddy than ever before. Next. This water right now is very clear. Most of the summer, Dinwiddie is very cloudy with a lot of glacial silt in it, and it's very, you can't even see into it very far. It's the cutthroat trout that are there, they're kind of landlocked in there, or at least they were up to this point. I don't know if other fish have invaded this water, brook trout in particular, but this particular area, the cutthroats have been there for a long time, and their coloring was almost like a silver salmon, if you will, a very light color. They're very unique fish. Next. More of the Dinwiddie stream. There's several falls on the Dinwiddie, and I think that's what's kind of isolated these fish that are in this area. This is down a little bit lower, and most fish can't leap up falls like this. So I think this is probably one reason why these cutthroat trouts are kind of a unique, isolated subspecies of cutthroats. Next. Brother Bob's trying his hand at seeing if he can catch a fish or not. Next. And coming back to camp with a trout. This was quite a few years ago. Since this time, the Game and Fish Department fish biologists and other fish biologists raised a concern about cutthroat trout. The numbers seem to be declining for different reasons, and it was suggested strongly that people not catch and keep cutthroat trouts. And so we adhered to that when Meredith and I were outfitting in the later years. We never kept, or never even really fished for cutthroats. We would always pick on some of the invasive species like browns and rainbows and brook trout and things of that nature. And we tried to leave these guys alone if we could. But when we took this cheap until it was back in that old days where we didn't think about that kind of stuff much. Next. This is Frances getting ready to cook supper. She's got her fish and her marinating sauce. Next. There's yours truly. This is back in the days, and everything has changed. I would just drink out of a stream like that. Those days are gone too. There's just too many bugs in the water anymore, so this is not a good idea. Next.
How much hair's brown? I'm here.
After we got into base camp, set up base camp, the first day we strolled up onto the higher country looking for sheep. So this is like climbing up out of the Dinwiddie drainage up on Horse Ridge, and probably altogether at least a 2,000 foot, maybe 3,000 foot altitude change during that day. But here we are getting up towards timberline and getting into the sheep country that we're excited to explore. Next. Again, this is what I was trying to explain is that there's sheep country and there's sheep country in the Wind Rivers. It's rough country in places. And so we were trying to find a couple of specks that were moving in country like this, and it's a challenge. Next. On our way up to climb up higher, we went by this structure. This is an old domestic sheep herders camp that was up on the hillside. We find a lot of these old sheep camps, domestic sheep camps, both in the Wind Rivers and the Absarokas. Back, I think it was probably in the 20s and 30s, raising sheep was a big deal, and there were thousands of sheep in the upper Wind River Valley, up in the Absarokas, the Winds, pretty much every mountain range in the American West. Sheep were something that was profitable, so they would bring herders up. They'd usually a horse packer would come out about once a week or so, resupply them, or move their camp to the next pasture, resupply them, come back a week later. It was probably a very lonely job. Next. This is climbing back up higher onto Horse Ridge again. We're still climbing, looking towards Gannett Peak. That's the highest peak in Wyoming right there, 13,805 feet. This is right at timberline up above the Inkwells area. About 30 years after this picture was taken, Meredith and I volunteered with high altitude archaeology. A lot of our teams would come into the country like this looking for evidence with a focus on the Mount Shoshone or the sheep eater people. We worked in the Grovants, the Tetons, the Winds, and the Absorcas all together. But later on, about, again, a couple decades after this picture was taken, we discovered that there was quite a huge occupational site right here at this area. And when we came back with an eye towards artifacts, instead of bighorn sheep, we paid more attention. And so that one time, the Mountain Shoshone, this was their summer home as well. Next. Again, looking out across that country up towards the Continental Divide on the Wind River. And again, with people, if they're mistaken that sheep are easy to hunt, you can see that sometimes it's not so easy. Next. We're still climbing. This is our first day. We're getting up higher and higher, more and more into sheep country. Next. Francis and Brother Bob are talking things over, trying to figure out what in the heck we thought we were doing, going up and chasing sheep around here, I think mainly. But this was kind of long in the afternoon, and we kind of felt like we better think about getting back to camp. We felt like we were right on the edge of something pretty interesting ahead of us, but we just were running out of daylight, running out of time. So we turned around and went back to base camp. Next. Again, I want to stress kind of country that we have traveled through and look at times. Next. So the following day, Brother Bob and I, we took a light camp on our backpacks. Francis stayed at base camp to keep care of things, watch the horses, do some more serious fishing and that sort of thing. And Brother Bob and I worked ourselves into this country. We just had a hunch that it might be a good place to go. And so the second day we took a light camp and backpacked in here. Next. Next. Alpenglow up on that country. Next. This is looking down into the very head of Bull Lake Creek. The Continental Divide is on the skyline back there, and you can see that we've gained quite a bit of altitude looking for sheep. Next. Meanwhile, back at the camp, Nancy is cooking up a storm. Next. This is after the first day after we got off the mountain. Brother Bob and I thought we'd freshen up a little bit, so we went down and took a little very quick dip into the 32.5-degree water. This might give you an idea about how hard it is to see sheep sometimes. This is pretty close. When you're looking at sheep 2, 3, 4 miles away, it's a bit of a challenge sometimes. They can blend right in. If they're laying down, it's really difficult. So again, some people are mistaken that it's really easy to just hunt sheep. Not necessarily. Next. One of the keys of sheep hunting is to do a lot of glassing. Next. And more glassing. And more glassing. And looking for a couple of dots that might turn into sheep in country like that. We got lucky the second day, late in the afternoon, got to where we thought we wanted to be and found some rams, and Brother Bob smoked a nice ram that afternoon. Again, you can see it's not quite the flat level country that you find over here in Painted Hills. Next. So it's late in the afternoon, we just opened the sheep up and we had our camp with us. We needed to find a place to camp. As you might guess, camp spots were at a premium in that country. You can kind of see where the sleeping bag is there. We found a small area that was not flat, but it had fewer rocks and the sloping a little bit. So for our camp that night, I rolled up against the rock on the downhill side, and Brother Bob rolled up against me, and we spent the night and then went to work the next morning. Next. This is the next morning. We finished taping out that ram's head and getting ready to carry it next. Brother Bob did a selfie. He wanted to pretend like he was really important and really helping out, so we got the picture. Next. What the idea was, we were going to take this sheep and carry it down to where we could get a horse the next day. You can't take horses through this kind of country, so we had to carry the sheep in our camp down quite a little ways. Next. This was our campground from the night before. Next. And Brother Bob carrying 2 sheep quarters down to where we can come back later with a horse. Next. This is my load. I think we each took 2 trips altogether. Next. Meanwhile, back at camp, Francis is still working hard. Next. So I was volunteered the next day to go and retrieve the sheep from where we had shot it. So I hopped on Smokey and took it to Bob. It took me all day to ride up out of Dinwiddie over a horse ridge, down into Dry Creek, up Dry Creek, get the sheep back and reverse that process. So here I am coming back in camp late in the afternoon. Next. Next. Here's the 3 musketeers posing with our ram. This is what I call a hunting pornography shot, where you stand with your trophy, and so this is us back at our base camp. Next. Brother Bob, very pleased and very lucky. Those pictures, the pornography pictures that you always see, that's what we take pictures of. Taking a picture of a roast or a hamburger made out of sheep is not as exciting as taking a picture of a ram. But another thing I want you all to take home with you is that there's lots of reasons why we are out there hunting. It's to get the trophy, but we also realize that we're part of the web of life. We're out there for many other reasons, besides just to kill something. Next. Next. We're out there to see the other critters. Next. We're out there to see where other people have been before us, also in those mountains, hunting sheep for thousands of years. The weaponry, the clothing, the language has changed, but what we did in 1979 was just follow in footsteps of others that had gone before us for thousands of years. Next. This is a picture of another sheep camp. This is my bride in her younger day, and Fazilith Qureshi, we helped him with his sheep hunt. And again, we're eating sheep ribs cooked over an open fire up in the mountains after hunting. So again, this is a scene that we did not invent. This has been done for thousands of years before us. Thank you. And next. We like to see things like that. That's part of a hunt. Next. Or see this. Next. And maybe pick a bunch of wild blueberries and put them in our pancakes in the morning. That's part of the hunt. Next. Or lay down in a field like that and watch the clouds go by. That's part of the hunt. Next. Or just enjoy a home in nature. Next. Or just be in a wild place and listen to the silence and collect our thoughts. Next. So this is the finish of the hunt, and I'm finished as well. Thank you.